We continue on our series of town profiles on housing with a visit up the mountain to Londonderry, to both its north and south villages. The town, like virtually everywhere else in Vermont, is struggling to get enough housing units constructed to meet the demand, from seniors to newcomers to younger Vermonters looking to build careers and start families. But as we've heard from everywhere else we've gone, that's not easy. According to a housing study commissioned by the Londonderry Housing Committee and prepared by Camoin Associates, a consulting firm based in Saratoga Springs, New York, today, Londonderry faces an immediate need of approximately 299 to 315 households that need new, improved, and/or alternative living arrangements within the town. This includes nearly 190 households that are struggling with housing expenses, as well as nearly 50 workforce households that are absent from the town because of the lack of attainable housing. The results also indicate a need for housing interventions across the income spectrum and for a variety of housing types, including owner-occupied and rental housing options. While the problem is complex and inseparable from other issues, the results indicate that without action, it is likely that housing needs in Londonderry will continue to grow into the future. The study also found other key issues, which include a shifting balance between seasonal and year-round residents, short-term rentals adversely impacting the housing market, housing price increases outpacing wage and income growth, limited options for changing empty nester or senior housing needs and preferences, and a workforce housing shortage that is constraining local and economic business vitality. The report goes on to state that without action to address housing issues, the nature of Londonderry will shift towards an even more seasonal community, all of which makes the town not that much different from many others like it across the country. To unpack more of what's happening up the mountains, we turn to Patty Eisenhower, who is the chair of that town's Housing Commission, for a deeper dive.
It's a variety of things, and it can be quite complex. I would say the two biggest factors are honestly a lack of building over the last few years. A little bit of a slowdown in building. I think COVID might have had some to do with that. I think the high cost of construction, certain projects maybe don't pencil out and aren't profitable for builders to do, so they just step back and maybe do something different. As you know, in Londonderry, we don't have town sewer or town water, and those costs can be high to put in. So they will gravitate to maybe those towns that do have that type of infrastructure, access to power. So those types of projects may pencil out maybe in Bellows Falls or in, Brattleboro, places like that. But in Londonderry, if you have to add those costs on, plus high cost of construction materials, a lot of projects don't pencil out unless they're maybe a luxury or a higher end type of house. The other factor is that since COVID, we do have a little bit of migration to the area. Remote workers are now able to work here and live here. As you know, we've historically in Londonderry have had a decent amount of vacation homes that maybe remain vacant, or they're rented long-term to seasonal workers, ski instructors or folks of that nature. And now a few of those are now occupied full-time because folks can work remotely. So that may have taken up some of the housing supply as well. So actually our number one goal as a housing commission is actually to help the town increase its capacity to address the housing needs. And increasing capacity can mean education. So educating our townsfolk and our workforce and our construction trades of the need for housing. It could also mean, putting in place enhanced zoning bylaws that create incentives for developers to come in. So that could consist of allowing higher density housing in certain areas, such as village centers. So rather than a minimum of several acres or 1 acre, we could have parcels maybe of a half an acre or less in the village centers to allow for more housing rather than a single family home, which has historically been the tradition in our area. Maybe instead of a single family home, we can have duplexes or triplexes in the appropriate areas. So zoning can have an influence, and then creating maybe incentives. And a lot of the time there's the gap in making the numbers work, and so how do we fill that gap? And that can come from possibly incentives, either state grants, federal grants, and or, as you know, with the Mountain Towns Housing Project, sometimes it's just straight fundraising or a combination to help lower the cost of housing. That historically Londonderry has been a large tourist town. You know, we have the 3 major ski areas. We call it the Golden Triangle, with Magic, Bromley, and Stratton pretty much in our borders. And so historically we've had a large number of vacation homes where traditionally they might have been, you know, families would come up during Christmas, or they come up for a week in the summer, and then possibly these families would rent them out to seasonal employees. So it might be the ski instructor that works at Stratton, you know, between January and March, someone like that, or during the summer, you know, a landscaper or someone like property manager might be in the house. And so I'd say with the combination of either remote work and or the ability to start to do short-term rentals, you know, folks have been able to rent them out maybe on a shorter term basis for people that want to come. I think there's a lot of dynamics in play there. I heard anecdotally at one of the select board meetings that, you know, with the advent of the Icon and the Epic passes, that travelers, you know, historically would get the pass for Stratton, or they get the pass for Bromley, and that would be the only resort they would go to all season. And now they have the ability to travel to many resorts under one pass. And so rather than spending the entire season at one mountain and maybe doing a seasonal rental, they're choosing to maybe spend a week here or a week there and do that. So that was interesting to hear that. So in terms of whether or not the short-term rentals are taking homes away from local workers, there may be something to that, but you know, recall, you know, some vacations homes are rather large, so they're great for big family reunions and gatherings, and some of the homes may not necessarily have ever been rented or, you know, rented to smaller families. So there is a demographic shift that's happening where households are shrinking smaller and smaller. And I want to say, based on our housing study, it was just over 2 people per household. So I think there's definitely a need for smaller units. Following the housing needs study, which concluded in April of this year, we decided to formalize the committee into a housing commission. And we've added a couple new members. One of the requirements is to have both a select board member as well as a planning commission member on the committee. And we have one more slot available. I'm just going to make a plug for it. And that we've thought that maybe it would be nice to make it somewhat of a Mountain Towns regional commission. So we're, because the needs are in Weston, the needs are in Bonneville, including a member from one of those towns as well.
Londonderry is still working its way through the flooding that severely damaged parts of the downtown and the North Village, and resolving the question of the Williams Dam, which is in need of repair or possibly removal. But the town also has a strong spirit and a sense of its past, as was demonstrated last week when a historic site marker honoring the birthplace of Burton snowboards was unveiled along Main Street. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.